Let's get it on!
Sprawl and brawl, ground and pound. Get ready for an MMA showdown. Now, the ultimate Octagon insider, Shaun and Tristen DuCross.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the DuCross Brothers Sports Warriors. Cross that line. We're your boys. I'm Tristen DuCross. Along my side, as always, is my partner in crime, Shaun DuCross. And I know, right? Different night. We were trying to do our show on Wednesday like we normally do. And unfortunately, you know, stuff happens out of our control. That's what happens when we do the show from home, right, Shaun? We're at our own kind of disposal when it comes to internet. And it unfortunately happened where our internet was out for most of the evening. So we just went, okay, no show, can't do it. But here we are tonight doing a show for you guys. So thank you for you guys tuning in tonight on a special edition of the Sports Warriors tonight. In the meantime, we've had some interesting stuff happen in the world of combat sports, Shaun,
to say the least.
I mean, you're talking about Herb Dean making news. UFC on ESPN 14 making news. And here we are talking about referees having multiple issues on a bad stoppage. And it's kind of making its way around the internet, Shaun. And I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent, because you and I see it two different ways. I wouldn't necessarily, you're pro Herb. I don't necessarily think I'm pro Dan Hardy. We've been commentators calling fights. We've been cage side covering fights. So it's kind of different for us to sit back and all of a sudden put on our ball cap to just talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do for the first portion of the show. We're going to talk about the bad stoppage. And do we really need a golden standard at this point? And I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that as well. I have a couple clips, too, that I want to play as well. And hopefully that goes over a little bit for you guys as well to kind of get our point across. Is that, I mean, I stayed up for a good portion of the night, digging deep onto late stoppages. And I didn't just look up Herb Dean. I could care less about if it was Herb Dean or not. I cared about late stoppages, period, in combat sports. Herb Dean just so happens to get lumped into it just because he is who he is, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about what happened and how we got here. And it was the Herb Dean late stoppage on the Francisco Trinaldo versus Jai Herbert fight. Was it late? Sure. The video that's going around, count 3 seconds, not 3 seconds. He should have pounced on him faster. The thing that I want to get to, let me see if I can get it. Let me see if I can get it for you guys. So, I have a couple sound clips just to kind of set up the narrative here. So, Herb Dean talking about the opponent falling down, okay? Listen to this.
But if you know anything about fighting, the fighter got hurt. Fighters get rocked all the time. But we're looking at his actions. He's tracking his opponent. He knows where his opponent is. He's put both arms in between him and his opponent. He's lifted his leg up, head off the mat. He's doing everything I can ask for him to do to stay in that fight. So there wasn't a bad stoppage, and we'll go more into that. But that person who's yelling out, that's almost the same thing as if you grab a horn and ring the horn as if you're calling the time. It can easily be
So in that clip, he talks about his opponent tracking, Shaun. You showed me a unique video in itself about whether or not he was tracking his opponent. We both thought that it was a clear knockout. The minute he went down, it was over, right?
That was the only thing we relatively agreed on. Was the fact that, was his eyes glazed over? Absolutely. There was no question in my mind that he was legitimately out. But to say that he wasn't tracking, or to say that, in your words and Hardy's words, he went into the fencing position, I couldn't see that for the life of me in any videos that Hardy was showing.
And I tried to pause it a few times just to kind of show you that posturing.
And even then, it still was not definitive in
right.
the video.
Because it's so quick.
But the video that I showed you completely changes the narrative.
Yeah.
If you slow that down, it changes the narrative. Because like you said, he was grabbing Jay's arm and guiding him, but he wasn't. And then when you look at it, as soon as he goes down, he doesn't even go in the fencing position. His arm immediately is up and over and reaches. To me, it looks like there was a clear reaching motion, as well as his right hand going over near his face. It was very hard to say what Hardy saw was legitimate. And from my perspective of being cage side over the years, is it's hard to be on any side of the cage to legitimately see anything clearly.
And I don't care if you have a monitor or not.
It's still hard.
Because the angle that you are given on the monitor, and trust, we know, not 100% you're going to see exactly what you think you see.
Correct.
Just because you are a fighter and you see the reaction of said fighter, right, Shaun?
Yeah.
That's your reaction, is it not?
Correct.
So when you're a fighter and you're a fighter calling the fight, like I always tell people, is that it is vastly different to get behind a mic and give a formed opinion on a subject just because you are in the fight game. Doesn't mean you could talk. Doesn't mean you could articulate a sentence or a thought to get the point across. Vastly different. To become one of the greatest coaches doesn't mean you're a great player, right?
Correct.
So, with saying that, it's so hard to see a guy get knocked out, and you see the feet come out, you see him going backwards, and you see him smack his head. It is very hard to keep your emotions in check when you're calling a fight. But I'm not going to sit here, and I'm not going to say that Herb Dean's a bad referee. I'm not going to sit here and say that Herb Dean needs to be reprimanded. I'm not. We know James Beers, John Romero, David Deacon, a lot of referees. We've talked to a lot of referees. Jason Herzog. We love talking to them because we have a transparency with them and they have a transparency with us. So I'm not going to go through a lot of conversations that we have had. They know the conversations that we have had. And it is such eye-opening and respectful between us and them. That's our rapport with them.
Absolutely.
So with this incident in Herb Dean is that I cannot 100% definitively say that Herb Dean didn't see what he saw because of the angles that we got. And trust me, Shaun, we were going back and forth about different videos. I mean, how many videos did we look at, Shaun? How many different angles did we try to get? Like, it's crazy how many angles both you and I came up with to look at. And it was crazy to see how you could kind of shift a little bit here and there. But, man, you just could not get a 100%
definitive look of
what Herb saw.
Also, at the end of the day, Tristan, all I can say is Hardy overreacted. There are certain times that when we're sitting cage side, that you have to be very careful in what you say. Like, there's been several times where we've been at the cage side and we're like, ooh, that fighter heard us. Ooh, probably should not say that right now.
Yeah.
There are several times in which you say that and you're like, just like, hold up, wait a minute. You got to be very careful. And when you're in an open arena where you can't turn off the switch of who to hear and who not to hear when you've got some people yelling. All you know is somebody yelling. Somebody's going to hear
that's
you.
Another thing.
We've heard it before where, one of the fights where Daniel Cormier and saying that it was basically a secondary coach.
Right. And that's another soundbite I want to get to real quick. Is something else interesting I heard Dean said, which I absolutely agree, and kind of what you just touched on right now.
Is during the match, someone yelled out, "Stop the fight." This is really interesting because there's only professionals there. There's not one fan in the building. Everybody has a job there. Everybody knows what their job is, and they have specific duties. I have a job to referee the fight. One of my duties for me is to stop the fight when the fighter's taking too much damage. There's two people who are authorized to advise me doing that, to maybe yell out those words, "Stop the fight." There's one, the physician. We have a ringside physician who knows more about the physical body than I do. And he's there to give me advice. If he can't get my attention, maybe he might yell, "Stop the fight." Then there's the fighter's corner. They train with him, they know about him, they know more things about him than I do. They may know something I don't know, and so that's why they would give me some advice to stop the fight. Ultimately, to stop the fight is my decision. So for anyone to...
So that was Herb Dean talking about somebody yelling outside the cage, "Stop the fight." And he explains a little bit about who can stop the fight. Shaun, you talked about that there's been times where we are cage side and we're calling a fight and we're like, "Ooh, a fighter heard us say something." There's a video that is circulating that it clearly shows, Shaun, where the shouting came from. And Herb Dean says, looks right where Felder and Hardy is and tells them, "Calm down." So he knew who was saying it and where it was coming from. If you're pointing at the commentator's table saying, "Calm down," to say that he wasn't sure, I don't buy that. I don't.
It's hard to buy it. It really is. It's one of those things that is like, I'm not so sure I'm 100% sold on that.
Shaun, there's been times where Ramiro has came over to us on a stoppage or something like that because he heard us say something. And he's come over to us and say, "What did you guys see? What did you guys see?" And then we have to explain to him. And then we get in a conversation. So trust me, if guys can hear cage side, trust me, you heard. You know exactly who was talking at what point and where it came from.
Absolutely.
You heard it. So don't play that. I don't buy that card. I don't think that you should play that card. You know where it came from. You know who said it. Own it. But I do think that we need to have a gold standard, Shaun, somewhere. Because to what are these refs kind of measured at?
They're not measured at anything. And
you go through the schooling. You go through these tests. You go through these stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what are they truly measured by? Because when you are in high school, you get grade letters, you pass a test, you get an A, you get a B. When you pass your SATs, you get a grade. At what point do we have a gold standard for referees to say this is what it means to be a good ref?
Well, that's the thing, though. I think
all we hear is, "Who's the good ref?" "Oh, Big John was."
I think a gold standard is not necessarily a universal phrase, but I think that when you go through the training to become a ref in anything, you are held to a gold standard. I think it comes down to what level of punishment comes down for doing things incorrectly. So I think the phrasing,
yes.
I think the phrasing of a gold standard is already there for the refs.
Should there be accountability for actions like this?
Absolutely. Like, if there's accountability for referees in the NFL, if there's accountability for umpires in Major League Baseball, then there should be accountability for referees in boxing, There should be accountability for referees in mixed martial arts. There should be accountability for judges in all sports. There should be that. If you have a commission of any sort that oversees any regulations at every point, you should be held accountable for
100%.
your own actions.
Absolutely.
That's what should happen. But it seems like when you get up to the higher levels of whatever sport it may be, the accountability is not held. The accountability essentially is washed away. So at what point...
Okay, I need to touch on this because this
is enough.
Right. Again, that's fake news.
No, it's not.
Because
Hardy, I heard Hardy say that him and Herbert weren't friends.
But that's people running with what Big John said. Big John said that they're best friends.
And Hardy says they're not friends. I take that.
Just because they're in the UK,
I take it with a grain of salt.
Big John's just inserting his ways because UK guy. Shaun, you were brought into an honorary UK team with Lint Vazal. So, I mean, you see where I'm going with this? Like, I don't believe a whole lot of stuff
and that's where I'm going with that, Tristan, is it's a lot of he said, she said.
Absolutely.
Hardy says one thing, everybody else says another thing. It's just like the Herb Dean thing and versus Dan Hardy.
I just think
you're 50-50 split.
Yes.
There's no way around it.
But at the end of this, all of this, Shaun, regardless of Herb Dean shedding a light onto this, right? Onto the late stoppage, because there's been several in the last couple of months, right?
Yeah.
How should the commission hold refs accountable, or if they're not going to hold them like accountable via suspension or a fine, right? How can you make this a learning opportunity?
It's simple. Okay? You got fights that are based on a 10 on a number scale of 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you can judge a round, who gets a 10, who gets a 9, who gets an 8, whatever. Why can't you judge a referee? Why can't you judge him on a scale of 10? Oh, you know what? Your performance tonight was a 5.
Okay, I'll take that one step further, okay? So you have a head commission guy, right? Now, I'm not talking about the judges. Let the judges do what they need to do, right? The commission guy, the lead guy, like say David Deacon, right? Knows all of his referees and all his and all the judges, right? David should be able to get a scorecard, have all the judges, the referees that are going to be there, right? And be able to score his own referees, and then at the end of the night, this is what your scorecard is. And then you teach them where they went wrong. What round they could learn better. What round could they have done? What round did they lose focus? Or what round did they end up changing and pivoting? You know? Something like that sort. I think that's what you need to have from the commission.
Yeah, you could.
It would be a great learning experience.
But again, that's like us trying to change something that's been broken that nobody necessarily wants to attempt to fix or better in the sport.
We got something that's broken, and I have a thumbnail that says it.